Adam, alcoholic.
Ralph Alcoholic. I just want to take a second before we get started and thank Adam for having me do this with him, and thank you guys for showing up week after week. And special shout out to some of my friends who showed up week after week. I'm not really sure why. And to tell you, thank you for helping me stay sober by doing this. Very tired. I was in Connecticut this weekend. I've been up since 4 and worked all day. Then I did a 5th step that was a monster. Didn't even get out of resentments. And then I was like, well, then I got this meeting. And if you would have said that, when I got sober, oh yeah, you're going to be working 16 hours a day, getting up at 4 o'clock and doing all this other stuff, I would have said you're crazy. But I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to participate in my recovery. Adam.
Okay, we're not going to do the recap. If there's anything that you guys feel that you missed, you can go on to the Vancouver Blueprint for Recovery and recap anything that we've done up to now. We're in the middle of page 83, where it says the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. If you're new or just joining us, part of the word spiritual, I was told, is ritual. And a lot of these things that we're going to start looking at now are really the development of some very specific ideas in steps 10, 11, and 12. We're going to just wrap up a couple things in the 9th step now. There's a final couple words on that, and we're going to go. So it says, unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon his spiritual principles, we think we ought not urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. Have you ever heard your actions speak so loudly I can't hear what you're saying? It's very, very true. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Ralph?
Just going to continue with the reading. There are many wrongs which can never be fully righted. We don't worry about them if we could honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, and considerate and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet and we don't crawl before anyone. And that's clear-cut directions there on how to do that. We should be sensible about what we're trying to accomplish and what we're saying, tactful in our language, and considerate of the other person's feelings. And it's my experience in all the amends that I've made and help people make is that sometimes I could just be way off. Sometimes I could say everything I think I did. And when I shut up and listen afterwards, when I ask them if there's anything else, I'm very surprised at the depth of some of the damage that I've done to someone. And there's been other times where I get surprised and the person's like, I just knew you were struggling. I was hoping you were going to come around. And I was scared when I first started doing these, but by doing them, we get over it. And I just want to touch one thing that says, where it says the spiritual life is not a theory. My second sponsor used to always say that the spiritual life is not a theory. He used to say the greatest thing about all this stuff, the spirituality stuff, is you don't have to understand it to try it. You try it and evaluate the results. Adam?
My sponsor used to, a couple things he said. He said to me, how free do you want to be? Do you want to be free enough to survive this life or to really chase your dreams? And I know that, like when Gregor just read chapter 5, it says that some of these we balked. And this part of the 9th step is where a lot of people kind of balk. And my home group, they want, I know this is going to be very offensive to some of the people on this platform, but they will not let you share in the meeting unless you've completed amends. That's just the way the group is. Every group has the right to autonomy, but they would like you to have completed amends. Very much like that part of page 25 where it says, none of us like the leveling our pride, the soul searching, the confession of our shortcomings, that the process requires for its successful consummation. The word consummation means completion. And the implication here is that steps 4 through 9 are a complete piece of work. That there's not a lot of latitude for opinion in the word precisely. When we came into the book, it says precisely how we have recovered. And so from that 4th step to this 9th step, I followed directions exactly as they were outlined. That thing that the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it, by the way, is a warning. It is a warning. I've got it listed as a warning, and then the rest of those are directions. But I think it's very, very important that when I work with people, they understand that we really, really do. Which is a life or death errand. That this is something that should be complete. And if there's something that we can't do, it's explained here that we can sometimes postpone. Sometimes we can send a letter, but these are the final crossing of the T's and the dotting of the I's on the restitution phase of this process. And that's really what this is. And that very much has a lot to do with justice. So shall I continue with the promises, Ralph, or
Yeah, go ahead.
do you want to add anything?
No, I was going to say, but we won't for time. I was going to say we could bounce back for, 20 pages, 30 pages earlier, how we were at the bedevilments, and now here we are at these beautiful promises. But go ahead.
Right. There's 30 pages between page 52 and 83, and the majority of the work in Alcoholics Anonymous is contained in those pages, which bring us from fear of people and economic insecurity to intuitively knowing how to handle situations, unhappy to happy for each bedevilment on page 52. And we already went through this many, many weeks ago that there would be a promise lateral to those bedevilments. And if you really look at it, and you can look it up online, there's a relationship between each of these, and each of these has to do with the amends. Fear of people and economic insecurity leaving. You don't think that has anything to do with making a 9-step amends? It's clear as a bell. A lot of this is very sensible. So it says, if we are painstaking. Now, that word painstaking, Carl Jung had a very famous statement, and this is what he said. He said, all neurosis is a substitute for legitimate suffering. That was a very famous line by Carl Jung. All neurosis is a substitute for legitimate suffering. In other words, if we're painstaking about this phase, painstaking about making these amends, okay, there's a freedom and a recovery and a healing that happens as a result of that. So it says, in this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. These are very powerful, very lofty. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. So, and each of these, if you look at it, with each of these promises, there's some piece of work contained in these last 30 pages that bring about. This is very, very logical. For each of these actions we've done in 4, 5, 6, 7, you're going to see these promises materialize. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. Okay, no matter how far down the scale, we'll see that our experience can benefit others. I mean, when you hear a 5th step, you hear that, you feel that all the time. Oh yeah, me too. I felt like that. I know what that's like. I had that experience. That alone is the benefit there. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. That's where purpose comes in. Process, power, purpose. Okay, we will lose interest in selfish things. If you look at the word selfish, it's 3 times here. Self-pity. There's a new word, right? What's the new word for self-pity? It's called depression, right? We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Self is used 3 times here. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Again, directly related to the actions in the 9th step. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. It seems that you ever get into the ghettos in this country, there's only 2 things that stick out: churches and liquor stores. And the reason for that is they both give man hope. And I see that relationship with God and alcohol. It's very interesting. That's why you will see a lot of people talk about drinking created the illusion that my life was manageable. When I was drinking, I intuitively knew how to handle situations that used to baffle me. When drinking, I could comprehend the word serenity and I knew peace. Alcohol creates this illusion. If you start to look at the promises, you'll see there's a relationship between God and alcohol here. Ralph?
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And it says that the first part of it says we're here painstaking about this phase of our development. Just for the people that are new, they're talking about the amends phase, okay, making the amends. And this is when the magic starts to happen. And then it goes on to say on page 84, are these extravagant promises? Anywhere else, hell yeah. But we see it happen all the time, by just going through the process. After 2, 3, 4 months, you start to see the person change. You start to change. We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but they always materialize if we think about it. No. If we read about it, no. If we work for them. This chapter is into action, not into thinking, not into whining. All right, and that completes step 9, and I was taught that while we're making amends, we continue on this because we clean up the past, and now we want to keep the pathway to our higher power open. It says this thought, what thought? The thought of cleaning up the past brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world in the spirit. Powerful. And it goes on with a direction. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. It should continue for a lifetime. Here's a direction. Continue to watch out for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Now, if you think about that, what step was that? That was step 4. When these things crop up, we ask God to remove them. 6, 7. We discuss them with somebody immediately. Step 5, we make amends if we harmed anyone. 8 and 9. And then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. That's step 12. And this has been something that, the longer I've done, the better I got at it. Particularly the 12 and 12 talks about the 5-point plan, praying for restraint of pen and tongue, an honest analysis about what's happening. And how I get that honest analysis is I may call Adam, hey, Adam, I got to run something by you. And I quickly tell Adam what happened. And then Adam says, all right, Ralph. It always comes down to one or two things, either forgiving the person or going to make an amends. But it's important to realize that I can't stay in anger. I can't stay full of resentments. I can't be dishonest. And the awareness comes from, for me, is staying connected to this power and practicing this step over and over again. I've had sponsees right on their wrist right here, PWA, pause when agitated, so they don't have to make those amends. Adam?
Yeah, I think maybe talk a little bit more about this. 10 is critical for transparency and accountability. When it says that spiritual life is not a theory, and part of the word spiritual being ritual, this is the lifestyle. This is a lifestyle that many of us have to adapt into our life. This part being a spot check inventory, but it's like if the 4th step were the features of a car, and I'm looking at this car and I see the cruise control, the power seats, the sunroof, the stereo system. I learn all the features of this car. What 10 is learning to operate that vehicle at 160 miles an hour on the racetrack. It also shows me that if I polish this car and there's one little spot on the windshield, you don't think I'm going to notice that spot? This becomes a way of life. It says we commence this way of living as we clean up the past. Well, if 9th step is cleaning up the past, when I'm working with new people, as soon as they make their first amends, I have them pretty much doing 10 and 11 immediately. I have them doing it immediately. And if you look at the wording here, you're going to see, watch for these things. It says, we ask God to remove them, right? At once. We discuss them with someone immediately. We make amends quickly, right? The word promptly is in the step. If you're going to eat crow, wouldn't you rather do it while it's still warm? I mean, you think about the reality of what this is. This is a daily discipline that becomes, it's magnificent. Because now what I've done, all the work that I've done up to now, I start to understand what my selfishness is. My selfishness is typically an attitude that I can do whatever I want and not pay the consequences. This attitude of you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to be watching for this now, which means I'm going to be on guard. I'm going to be vigilant. Okay. It says I've entered the world of the spirit. Now, what do you think that means? If I've entered the world of the spirit, what have I exited? Well, I've exited the world of self. It's so fascinating. It was brought to my attention by my friend Herb K. He goes, well, if you've entered the world of the spirit, what have you exited? I've exited the world of selfishness and self-centeredness. I'm going towards God-centeredness, service-centeredness, other-centeredness. So this thing here that I did in the 5th step, where I admitted the fault, I acknowledged it with another human being, right? And then I come to a type of acceptance with it, is something that I'm going to be doing on the fly the rest of my life. This is where the accountability and the transparency is so important, to connect with another human being or several human beings that you respect that are also doing the same work, and to have this transparency here. So this was very, very powerful to me. So I have in my book here, it's spot check, the world of self I'm exiting, pray, talk, amend, and help. Those are the three things. So I'm continuing, right? I'm going to pray that God removes them. I'm going to discuss them with someone, talk. I'm going to amend, which set any wrongs right, and then I'm going to turn to someone I can help. These are things that I'm doing throughout my day, not at the end of the day. So do not confuse this with the 11th step, which is upon, when I retire at night and upon awakening. A lot of people think they're doing a 10th step at the end of the day, but when that person's in front of me and I cut him off on the freeway, or I'm disrespectful to someone at work, I need to do it immediately. If I wait to the end of the day, the moment is lost. So I've been very, very careful to learn how to really do this and apply this to my life at all times. We can open it up for questions later on and talk about some of these ideas. But again, the next piece in this is I'm watching for the dishonesty, the lies I tell myself. And that might be how I paint the red flags green. It might be my fault finding mind. So I'm starting to look again at this piece. The resentment, which is my attachment to an old idea. My attachment is either to people, places, or things, but those are attached to ideas that I saw in my 4-step. So I'm asking to be rid of these things. Again, the same thing that I was looking for when it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that is the root. There's no way of entirely being rid of self. I'm trying to be rid of this selfishness now on the spot every time it crops up, because what happens if I do that is I gain effectiveness, I gain understanding, and what happens is now I'm not caught between these two ideas, yesterday and tomorrow. And yesterday I have guilt, shame, and remorse, and tomorrow I have fear, anxiety, and worry, and I'm crucified between these two thieves. So what's happening now in 10 is I'm starting to get free of it. I'm starting to really get free of it, and when I get free of it, I'm present. I'm in the moment. I'm no longer attached to an old idea. I'm not taking my past and projecting it into my future. So this is magnificent. This is one of the greatest anger management tools I've ever seen. To have a quiet mind, to have a loving heart, to be able to navigate around the drama, to be able to match calamity with serenity. I'm going to try to process differently now. This is like the viral scan. At 4 through 7, when I start to look at the way that a computer operates, this is almost like an operating system. That's what one of the words definitions of a program is: a sequential set of instructions that brings about a result. So what I see now is I start to see this thing where I'm starting to watch for these things. It's very interesting because in the 5th step, it says admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our defects. It doesn't say wrongs. So he uses the word wrong and defect interchangeably. So now in 10, I continue to take personal inventory. And when I'm in defect, I promptly admit it. It's not just when I wrong someone else. It's when I start to get off course. It's almost like a plane. I think Sandy used to talk about that. This plane going in, from one end of the country to the other. It's off course most of the time. It's always being adjusted. This 10th step is about a spiritual alignment. My friend Herb says it's like a channel, like Lord, make me a channel of light peace. 10 clears the channel, 11 fills the channel, 12 empties it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm starting to find out how to clear this channel. Then I can be almost like an agent for God's will, really. I'm aligning my will now. And it's a very, very powerful thing. So I watch for that. I watch for the selfishness, this attitude, the dishonesty, the resentment, which is my attachment, and then the fear, which is, again, always my faulty relationship with God based on self-reliance. I'm watching for it. When it crops up, I discuss it again immediately, right? I set wrong any rights. I ask God to remove them. Same thing, but it's something that I have to do all the time. I know, Ralph, I'm beating this to death, but it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, and this matters to me because what it does, if I can continue to do this, is I get really, really clear. I become very effective. I'm able to be rid of the things that are blocking me. And the quicker I do that, the more streamlined my life's going to be, especially with romantic relationships, with our employers, with our family. When these things crop up, this is the application now of everything we've done up to this point in the book. All that stuff we did, all that information in the 4th step. And if you really look at it, when Silkworth said restless, irritable, and discontent by nature, that was the brilliance. Because, see, the irritability is of the mind. That's the 10th step. The restlessness, the body, be still and know that I am God. And the discontent, the 12th step. See, the interface of these three ideas is remedied now in 10, 11, and 12.
Okay.
Ralph?
Yeah, and I just want to say, it may sound something like, I don't know, it's calculus for what we're talking about, but one way I learned to do this was having those open and honest relationships with my support people and my sponsor, because the bottom line is to continue to watch out for those things. How I was aware of them is I was disturbed. Something happened in my life that I didn't like that was causing me a disturbance. And it talks about it. It says, whenever I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. And that disturbance of me not liking what happened is always one of these things that Adam just went over. So if you're new, don't worry about being able to identify this. You'll be able to identify this because you'll be upset about something. And it's digging deeper, because what's causing me to be upset? Is it that I'm being selfish? Is it I'm really being dishonest? Is it being self-seeking? Is it I'm full of fear? One of these things. Do I have anger? Am I replaying something that happened early in the morning? So it's a thing that it's a way of that we live forever moving forward, 4 through 9 all the time. So how you are aware of these things is that you don't feel good. And it's kind of like if you ate some bad food, your upset stomach, you feel better once you throw up and get rid of it. And that's how we feel. And it doesn't look like it, but I'm sorry, I was acting like a jerk. You feel better after it's done. And it's something like, I remember reading that says you don't have to understand the steps to take them, but you have to take them to understand them. And that's what we're talking about for people that haven't experienced this. Just try it and evaluate the results. All right, so continue. We want to get to the promises.
Yeah, these after these directions, Ralph's going to read the 10-step promises, which are way, way really loftier than the 9th step. I was more interested in these promises because without this, I'm a dead man. These are for me, these are the big ones. All that fluffy stuff in 9, this was a little more powerful for a drunk like me. Go ahead.
We cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it like a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we still find that this has happened automatically. We see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given to us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not sworn it off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And I wrote recovered. And for many years, I would always say I was a recovered alcoholic. And then my second sponsor would always tell me, that's true and everything like that. And he told me when I say I'm recovering, I'm still causing division. So I don't say it anymore, but that's a recovered state. And starting with the first part of the promises, it says, for by this time, sanity will have returned. The sanity we're talking about is the insane idea of picking up a first drink. We're restored to sanity regarding that. And if you guys remember, if you see page 24, it says we lack the type of defense which stops us from putting a hand on a hot stove. Here, we're tempted, we recoil from a hot flame. And that's just 60 pages later. And that's pretty cool. And it says our new attitude toward liquor has been given to us without any thought or effort on our part. And the new attitude, I guess, does, but there is definitely some effort on our part. And the effort is by doing the work, by writing the inventory, sharing it with someone, being rid of these things and making the amends. And then this attitude towards liquor happens. And I love it how it just comes. That's the miracle of it. It goes on to say, it's easy if we let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, rest on our ass. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We're not cured of alcoholism, but we have as a daily reprieve, which is a stay of execution, contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And here's directions. Every day is a day we must carry God's vision into all our activities. And, not cured. I was told that, if you got shot 5 or 6 times. They brought you to emergency room. You get triaged, you get operated on, and you recover. You recovered, yeah, but you're not bulletproof. And it's the same thing with us, that we're not cured. We have a daily reprieve. Adam?
I look at the 10-step promises, and I hadn't done this before, but look at them in the opposite. What untreated alcoholism looks like. When I am fighting anybody and everything, everywhere I go, I'm in collision with people. That's what untreated alcoholism looks like. And that's where I would see the insanity continuing in my life in untreated alcoholism. That I would still be fighting it. I would be interested in liquor. It's like I have to look at the opposite of some of these promises. It's very interesting because, and then at the bottom of this, where it says it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action, that's the warning. The word rest on our laurels. Laurels means past accomplishments. In other words, what it's really saying is the shower I took yesterday won't keep me clean today. I can't stay sober on yesterday's program. I think that it's so easy for new people to think that once they've done a lot of this work, that somehow, at what point does the diabetic not need the insulin? Like this is a daily, this becomes a lifestyle. So when it says here resting on our laurels, we're headed for trouble. We're not cured. It's very important that I understand that I can maintain and develop a spiritual life, but I have to continue doing that. I tell my sponsees, if you unplug a refrigerator, everything goes bad. It doesn't matter if it's 6 weeks old, 6 months old, or 60 years old. If I unplug that refrigerator, what happens is all the fruit and the vegetables slowly start to deteriorate. And I'll look at it and I won't see it. I won't recognize, again, that I'm fighting everybody again, that everywhere I go, I'm meeting an a-hole because I'm the common denominator. I'm starting to see what happens if I don't heed this warning. Then I start to see that all of a sudden I don't react sanely and normally anymore, right? So it's very interesting. So I start to understand, what does it mean to maintain my spiritual condition? What I was told is go back to the triangle. Go back to that triangle in the front of the book, recovery, unity, and service. Am I contributing in my life? Am I belonging in my community? Am I continuing to uncover, discover, and discard again? What's blocking me? Not just from God, which is my agnosticism, from you, which is my resentments, and from really contributing to my community. If I can't see it and be vigilant, this is about a word. The word is vigilant. It means to be on guard. It's critical that I see it. I do not have the latitude to deviate. My experience with this after 22 and a half years and 20 years of failure before that is that if I deviate in any way, it's like a relationship. You stray, you pay, right? Same thing with AA. You stray, you pay. That's just the way it works. And for me, I'm enjoying I love my recovery. I don't want, it's like this car. I'm going to keep this thing spotless. Because by doing that, it runs better. My life runs better. My relationships are better. I can be rid of the fear and the selfishness and the dishonesty quickly without reservation and then be effective in my life. So, this is such a matter of fact, simple idea. Although it is spiritual, there's a lot of ritual here that we do. And if you're new, this is the point of the exercise for me. Everything I've done up to now is getting me to this place. Every day it says, is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. So it's an alignment now from my will to God's will. We were talking about this yesterday, that the function of the mind is to think, the function of the body is to act, the function of the spirit is will. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to align our will in that 10th step and the 11th step. So I don't know if that makes any sense, Ralph.
Yeah. And with that direction, every day is a day we must carry God's vision to all our activities. This is for everyone in this meeting. If you consciously invite God into all your activities, your behavior can't help but change. Okay, God, come on. We're going out there. We're going in the car. Let's go, God. And like literally, if you could be that aware of it, it's incredible how you behave because he's there. Like we don't know he's there all the time anyways, but we're really consciously aware of him. Try watching porn with God sitting next to you.
Oh, stop
it. Anyways, got to have fun a little, right? Much of us had already been said about receiving strength and inspiration and direction from him, with a capital H, who all knowledge and power. If we've carefully followed directions, we begin to sense a flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we've become God conscious. We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11, which suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy in this matter. Better men than us are using it constantly. It works. If we have the proper attitude and work at it. It will be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make definite and valuable suggestions. Bill wrote that this is kindergarten, spiritual kindergarten, and that there's plenty of other books out there and to try and use these. But in my experience, and I know it's a lot of people's experience, this is sometimes we see people come in and they have some recovery, they get them some things going, but then they start going towards these other paths, spiritual paths, maybe church, and then they leave out AA. In my experience, it's always whatever else in addition to, not instead of. And here comes clear-cut directions about when we retire at night. And one of my favorite speakers, a friend of mine, Scott Lee, used to always say, part of doing the next right thing is doing the last right thing, and getting to bed in time to take an inventory and to plan out the next day tomorrow. So in the next day, we're calm, we have clear-cut, we have a direction, we have sort of a plan of what we want to do. But it's going to sound familiar to what we've already covered in the 10th step. But this is just pretty much like if we missed anything. This is like, I heard a speaker say that if you're working on a skyscraper and all of a sudden you drop a power tool, it's the net that catches that from going down and being a missile and crashing into someone's head. So during the day, if we miss something, at night, if we're still thinking about something happened at the 9 o'clock morning meeting or at lunch or something that you said or didn't say, this is what we're talking about. And the key word in this is it says when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. We're resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. Again, it sounds like 4, right? And 10. Do we know an apology? 8 and 9. Have we kept something to ourselves we should have discussed with another person at once? 5. Were we kind and loving towards all? And it does say all. It doesn't say almost everyone, but it says all. What could we have done better? We're thinking of ourselves most of the time, or we're thinking what we could have do for others, or what we could put into the stream of life. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making review, we ask God for forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And that asking God for forgiveness is a prayer. And for me, by inventorying for years, I have them going back for months. It's constantly inventorying, and it starts out as me being aware, what could I have done better today? Well, there's lots of things, but just like for today, I could have worked harder when I was at work. I could have did this. I could have, maybe some days I could have reached out to more AAs. Maybe I could have ate better. But it's the identifying it in the 11th step, and then I take the appropriate actions to try and improve in these areas, constantly improving because we like the results. Adam?
Yeah, going back one page to the bottom of 85, I think it's really important. It says here, this is a promise at the very last paragraph. It says, if we have carefully followed directions. The word directions in the chapter 5, the original manuscript said, rarely have we seen a person fail that's thoroughly followed our directions. And it's referring back to these directions again, and it's going to give you, these are actually promises. We have begin to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious, okay? We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. There's 3 things that I start to look at in 10 and 11. And my experience is that what I'm praying for is direction, wisdom, and power. And you'll see the 3 of those right there. Strength, inspiration, and direction. Okay. So he's starting to explain now what I'm seeking in 10 and 11. It's like my body is instinct, my spirit is inspiration, my mind is intuition, all of it is insight. Those are the 5 I's: instinct, inspiration, intuition, insight. So I start to look at those as things that I'm developing now. I'm going to start developing in 10, 11 these vital 6 senses. These are not like sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. We're talking about these are also senses: inspiration, intuition, insight, instinct. These are 6 senses. They're beyond what we can really explain. So I think it's very, very powerful to see that this is something that's going to develop now. It will develop in this part of the program for me. As I start to do this, I become intuitive. I become inspired, right? I become insightful. These are powerful. These are huge. I mean, these are things you can't really buy. But once I can be rid of my selfishness and my self-centeredness, suddenly I start to develop this and it becomes automatic. That's why he uses the word automatically. You look at those words and those 10-step promises, right? It's fascinating. It's fascinating how much deeper this was. Bill was just, I mean, it's amazing. Bill was, I think Ernest Kurtz had said he could see further up the road than anyone he'd ever met at that time. And a lot of these things are a compilation of many other spiritual disciplines that have really been just kind of focused in this area of the book. Ralph?
Oh, you nailed it. After we make the review, obviously we go to sleep, and here's the directions, and I don't care. I'll be late for work. I'll be late for an appointment. I do not leave my house without getting centered. And there's been a very few days where I fell asleep without doing an inventory at night. It says, upon awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking. That's a direction, especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And, Adam's been hammering home during this whole session about self-pitying, and that you could substitute that word for depression, really, because that's me. And I'm like that. I'm going to start to use that more. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. And we could read this and we could kind of analyze it, but unless you do it, you're not going to fully understand it. In thinking about our day ahead, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. We ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we tried this for a while. What used to be a hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still experienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is probable we are not going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find our thinking will be at times passes more and more placed on inspiration. We come to rely on it. And that's why we need each other to notice, hey, what's wrong? Nothing. Why don't you tell your face that? We need each other for this, because sometimes our thinking can be wrong. We could still be, maybe self likes to jump back in every now and then. Every now and then we put on the life sucks glasses or the selfishness glasses, and it's up to each other to have our backs to really say, hey, Adam, what's going on? You seem off. And doing that inventory, where are you at with the circle and the triangle, to try and find out where we're at. But before we continue, we're almost done. Why don't we do a quick seventh tradition, Rodney?
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. As we stated earlier, the seventh tradition helps us contribute to AA services. I've just posted in the chat our links for PayPal or e-transfer for Canadians. So contribute if you can. Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you.
Okay. Adam?
One of the things that I did, and no one says you should do this, but I printed this whole section of the book up in large print. And then what I did is from 80, I think it's from 86 to 88, 85 to 88, the word ask is used 6 times. Every one of those is a prayer. So you go through it, we ask God for forgiveness, right? We ask God to direct our thinking. We ask God for inspiration and intuitive thought, okay? We ask all throughout the day what our next step is to be, okay? We ask for the right thought or action. I go through those prayers and I start to really, really focus on those prayers. This becomes a very, very powerful tool. I mean, I like, if you look at just the top paragraph in page 87, what Ralph just read, look how many times he uses the word intuition and inspiration, inspired, inspiration. He uses the word inspiration and intuition 5 times in 2 paragraphs. So all the way through the book, Bill does this. He's almost redundant, but he's trying to really kind of hit home what this is. He's helping us to understand this is what it is. Inspiration, intuition. That's what's developing here. That I'm trying to develop this channel. I'm trying to be rid of self-centeredness so I can develop a God-centeredness. It's very simple. I mean, it becomes obvious after you've done it a bunch of times, but so I've got, because one of my books here is Prayers, Promises, Warnings, and Directions. And I go through the whole book. So this part of the book, it's just lit up like a Christmas tree. My book, it's giving you all the prayers, all the promises, all the warnings, all the directions, all the way through, so that I can be very, very clear on it. I mean, I'm using this part of the book now as my life is centered in 10, 11, and 12. It's centered here. And it's so simple, because once I've done the work, it's like I've taken the math, I've taken the pre-algebra, the intermediate algebra. Now I'm starting to develop a kind of a progression to a spiritual life. It's helping me to develop a very simple spiritual life. And that life has a lot to do with helping others. I can practice these spiritual principles by working with new people, by helping them to find the truth. And it becomes very empowering. There's a purpose to this. So it's almost like 10 is the program, 11 is the power, and 12 is the purpose. So I'm starting to see now these are functions. These are functions, like humility plus service equals gratitude. And gratitude is a consciousness. That's a function of the spirit. To have a grateful and thankful heart is something that can happen through doing this. Ralph? Shall we
conclude this period
yeah.
of meditation with a prayer that be shown all throughout the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask, especially for freedom from self-will, and be careful to make no request for ourselves. We ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You could easily see why. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in the morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers and emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these books may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. Adam?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Again, this becomes about an alignment, and I suggest look at the word ask all the way through here, because each of these are going to be prayers. They're giving me directions to ask for the inspiration, the intuition, direction, wisdom, power. Those are the three things that I start to look at here. So it says, as we go through the day, when agitated or doubtful, we ask again for the right thought or action. There it is. There's the word ask. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Okay, alignment of will. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. Okay, so again, you can see here that this is a lifestyle. Again, from the very beginning of this talk tonight, part of the word spiritual being ritual. That if I can develop this ritual in 10 and 11, develop it and practice it every day, it's giving me a way to bookend my day, okay? Upon awakening, I'm asking God, as we saw, to direct my thinking. It's almost like considering my plans for the day. I tell my sponsees, get a planner. Have a plan. Old Clancy used to say, never leave a meeting without knowing where your next one is. Always have your day bookended with these ideas. Because for us, it is critical. Part of the structure here, this house through which we walk, the cornerstone, the keystone, this arch, is that we have a very structured life in this area. So it says, thy will be done. We are in much less danger of excitement. We become more and more efficient Okay? Effective. That's what it means. All right? We do not tire so easily. We are not burning up energy foolishly like we used to, right? As we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. That piece right there goes right back to I am the actor trying to be the director. I'm forever trying to arrange my career, my relationship, right? My employer. If only my wishes, if people would do as I wish, right? So there it is. So it's foolish. It's foolish to try to arrange life to suit myself. That is the plight of Al-Anon and alcoholics. Is that if only people would change, then we could be happy. It's saying that it's foolish. It's saying now this way that doesn't work, but this does. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined. Okay, discipline. I hated the word discipline because I thought it meant taking a directive from another person. But this is self-discipline. It's me acknowledging that these actions will make my life better. Okay, because we don't like the word directions. A lot of us don't. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. So it's just outlined a very simple way of spiritual discipline, spiritual directions, intuition, inspiration, insight, right? But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. By the way, we're not going to do chapter 7. There's 39 specific directions on working with others. I have a book that it's just directions. There's 39 specific directions on how to work with others. If you ever have any questions, go through and highlight all of those directions, and it'll help you with sponsorship. Ralph?
I just want to say that it was great to go through this again and again and again. And I'm starting this again on Tuesday in another group. And I didn't realize how many times it says ask God in these last few pages, how many prayers there are. It's just, I mean, I don't know how many times we've read it, but tons. And for the last part, it says we're in much less danger, excitement, fear, anger, or worry. So the whole point of doing all this stuff is to get us into the now, right here, right now. Not worrying about tomorrow, not worrying about what we did yesterday, but right here, right now, where our higher power is. I hope that if someone's new, if they've sat through most of this, that they're actually taking these actions, because it's just an amazing journey. And that, and we have a design for living that works. And it sounds complicated, some stuff, but really, if you read the black words on the white pages in this blue book, your life will change. That's a fact. I promise you that. You want to say anything else, Adam, before we wrap up?
No. Do you want to open it up for questions? Maybe we can make this last 10 or 15 minutes interesting. There's got to be some questions.
Got to be.
We got Angela.
I want to thank everyone for staying with us through all this.
Hi, guys. I've loved it. It's been excellent. I have a question for you. I'd love your opinion on this. So if you have other addictions as well, like a lot of us do, we're looking at alcohol, we're looking at drugs, we're looking at gambling, sex, food, whatever it is. Do you suggest then that we go through and do a step 4 or a set of steps on each individual addiction? And if so, okay, so I'll just let you, what do you think of that then?
Absolutely not. I did when I got a year and a half sober, I'd done all this work, and I went to Nicotine Anonymous, and I started sponsoring guys with 35, 40 years sober that had stopped smoking, and the wheels completely came off their program. And it's not, if you look at the resentment inventory, I'm resentful at people. I'm resentful at principles. I'm resentful at ideas, right? I'm looking at my fear, my faulty relationship with God based on self-reliance. I'm looking at my agnosticism in every one of those fears. And I'm looking at my relationship conduct. This is not specific to an addiction. We know that we play musical poisons in the first half of step 1. Put down the drink, pick up the fork, put down the fork, pick up the credit card, put down the credit card, start acting out in the rooms. There's a couple hundred 12-step programs. Categorically, they fit into the 7 deadly sins, right? You look at pride, anger, greed, gluttony, lust, envy, sloth. If you look at it, like gluttony is overeaters, it's nicotine anonymous, it's how, right? With greed, it's under earners, it's gamblers anonymous. If you really look at each 12-step program, it's typically categorically one of those areas. What the book's saying is when I straighten out spiritually, only then do I straighten out mentally and physically. So primarily the work in 4 through 9 is going to be the same. When someone really does this in their entirety, most of those addictions are going to start to right themselves. I mean, it's nice to be in a room that with people that suffer from the same musical poison as you, because we can identify with that and we feel safe to talk about it. But
I have
eventually,
a quick question.
they're okay. Bill Wilson had said, our way of life has its benefits for all. The original 12 steps said, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics. So others means all 12-step programs.
Okay, thanks. And then practice the principles in all of our affairs. Yeah. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a 3-part step. Step 12. 3 parts.
Rob?
Hey, Bob, alcoholic. Once again, thanks, guys. I definitely appreciate all your time and your effort and your patience with this. I have a question for both of you, and it's we've all been sober for a few years, continue to do this. What's your nightly prayer and meditation time looking like, in morning prayer and meditation time? It's, for me, it's always the hardest thing to stay in the mix and stay involved. To recommit each and every day to this prayer and meditation and inventory. Can you give me a little bit of what your morning and nightly routine is like, guys? Thank you.
Ralph, you want to go first?
Sure. My nightly inventory involves all these men here with a nightly inventory where we share inventories together, and it's straight out of the book. My morning inventory is where, when I start out, is I read. I have a couple different things that I read, and then I just sit in prayer. I have this chair, I just sit in and I pray. And mine starts the night before. Where I always write out the things that I want to get done. And when I was new in recovery, I was taught that the stressful things to try and get done earlier in the day, so I'm not thinking about them all day. It's not really in our book, but just as a practical thing to try and get rid of the stressful things early. And then I just sit and I pray, and I just start to listen, and I start to listen to what my higher power wants me to do. And it's a practice that I've come to do. I've read all sorts of books. I'm currently reading, well, Adam, should we talk about books that are, or should we just wing it? I'm reading a book called The Four Agreements. It's an excellent book. It's mind-blowing. The Power of Now. So I read certain different types of books, and I just go from there. I touch base with sponsees in the morning. We're all texting each other. My phone starts texting early in the morning. Daily ponderables, and that's it. I have a big book quoted a day that we read a passage from. If you read 2 pages in a book a day, you read the whole thing twice a year. So, and at night I do exactly what I just said.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I do the nightly review, but it becomes a working part of the mind. I mean, it seems, Bob, that after I've done this over and over again over the years, it's become automatic with me to not go to bed with resentment. I don't wake up. I mean, I know some people do wake up with just like, with the vulture on the bedpost saying, I've been waiting for you. I really don't have that. I did in the past, but for some reason, I pretty much do have a quiet mind now. I don't live in much fear. I mean, occasionally I worry. I know that I could do better with that, and I ask God to help me with it. But upon awakening, I do ask God to direct my thinking. I just try to be a good person. It's just, I try to watch for this attitude, and I just try to be kind and helpful to people. If it really crops up for me, like I'm mean to somebody, or I'll do the writing on it. A lot of times I'm driven by fear. I admit it, and it's shameful. I mean, the first thing that I think happened to me when I started to really recover is I was so embarrassed by my behavior sometimes. Like I would just send an email or say something dumb to my girlfriend, or, and it's like, and I'm like, oh, I can't even like look at the, it's just awful. But see, I never even realized that before. So that was progress for me to suddenly realize that, I'm acting like a child. I'm being a baby. I'm being driven by fear. So that was powerful, like to do that, and then to ask God to help me to do better next time and just continue to do better. I don't think God's looking at me like some genius down here. I'm just another guy bumbling through my life. And this is so beautiful that we can share this. If you get to travel around the world and go to AA meetings all over the world, you'll find out that we're very like-minded people. And we, pretty much the ones that are doing the work in AA are wonderful, and the ones that are not are just kind of, you know what I mean? We kind of steer clear of, untreated alcoholism. We try to be compassionate, but, it's, so all the time I have to continue to adhere. It's this perfect adherence to these principles. The word adherence means glue. How can I stick to this? 10 and 11 are asking me to stick to this way of life, this design for living, this roadmap to spiritual success. So I'm doing it upon awakening. I'm doing the nightly review. And throughout the day, I'm doing the mindfulness practice. And I'm doing the best I can. Again, not perfect. Every once in a while, I have a colossal, kind of problem with it, and people know it.
I just want to say one more thing. I still always thank God for keeping me sober, and I always ask Him in the morning to help me. And do I think that for 1 second that if I forgot, it wouldn't happen? But it's just my way of showing gratitude. And the other thing is sometimes when I'm doing my review, I'm like, remember, I catch myself about to say something really stupid, and sometimes I just laugh. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy I didn't say what I was thinking. Could you just imagine everyone in this meeting, if we had little bubbles above our heads, saying what we were thinking, at all times, we'd all be in trouble. All right, Phyllis.
Yes, I'm Phyllis, alcoholic. Adam, you mentioned 10 as being clean, 11 fill. Was 12 empty? What was 12?
Oh, the channel, 10 clears the channel, 11 fills the channel, 12 empties it. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
My
so
sponsor
much.
said that we are trying to be a conduit of God's love. And the reason we can't do it is because we're full of self.
Yes,
so if we can be rid of the self, then we become this pipeline of spiritual energy and love. That's just another way to see it. Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you.
That's it for the questions.
That it? Well, thank you guys for going through this with us.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking us through it.
Okay.
Rodney, thank you so much, buddy.
Maybe we'll get to do it again at some point.
I'd love to.